We are making a pumpkin dress today, so let us get started.
So I made my pattern by wrapping saran wrap around my body, or plastic wrap, and then using duct tape. You can even use masking tape, and taking a Sharpie and drawing my style lines on. Now I wanted the corset to be the stem part of the pumpkin, so I made the bottom, or like the hem of the corset, these jagged edges. So you know how a stem of the pumpkin has these like jagged edges before it goes into the actual pumpkin? Yeah, so that's why I did jagged edges. So after adding seam allowance to my pattern, I cut it out of this faux leather fabric that I had laying around for years, and I did the same thing with my lining that I had left over from the last project. Notice how for the pleather I'm using clips instead of pins. Pleather, leather, or any fabric like this does not heal, which means that with regular fabric, when you push a pin through it or a needle, basically what it's doing is moving the threads of the fabric out of the way to create a path for the needle to go through. This, however, if you put a needle through it, it'll just put a hole in the fabric itself and it won't close up, and it'll just perforate the fabric. So to prevent that, I use clips. I made sure I sewed at 1/2 inch for all of the panels. And to make sure I didn't perforate the fabric any more than I already did, I did not backstitch. I left a long tail of thread so I could tie a knot. I believe I tied it 3 times and then snipped off the ends. I see everything coming together, I get so excited. But anyway, I love the corset. I just wish that right here that I added a boning channel, because I just felt like it could have used a bit more stability right there in that lower waist area. But when I pressed against myself, I was like, wow, this really looks like a skull. It looks like the Punisher symbol, and I couldn't get it out of my head, but it is coming together. I love it. It does look like a pumpkin stem. Alright, so corset has been sewn. It already looks like the pumpkin stem. Super cool. The seam allowance is so bulky, so I'm just going to trim off like one side, like trim it off halfway. Trim off half the seam allowance of one side and then fold over the other side, and that will be like the boning channel, just to take away some of that excess. So for the corset, the middle seam allowance, I just trimmed off the left flap of the seam allowance. I trimmed it off as much as I could. For the left side of the corset, I just trimmed off the left flaps of the seam allowance as much as I could. It looks like I trimmed off like about halfway. And for the right side, you're just going to do the same thing, but you're going to trim off the right side flap, the right flap of each seam allowance. And we're doing this because we're going to sew down the remaining flap that's not cut down. We're going to sew that down, like edge stitch it, so that it can create a boning channel for our boning to just slide within. And if we just leave that both of the seam allowances the same length, it's just going to create way too much bulk. Remember, you're not going to be able to use any pins to make sure those seams are laying flat when you top stitch this. Make sure you're stitching all the way to the edge, because I did manage to sew my seam allowances a bit too narrow, and it was hard to get the boning inside for some of them, so just be very aware of that. Girl, there is nothing for you to be proud of. You about to be stressing about these boning channels. Girl, put that down. Folding the boning up to the corset boning channels, I did cut each boning accordingly, cutting it about 1 inch shorter to compensate for when I have to attach the lining to the self fabric. My girls, please remember to curve out your boning channels. I don't care if you gotta curve it out with your scissors, or you gotta curve it out with a nail file, or if you gotta drag it over with your car. I don't know if you gotta go outside and file it down on the sidewalk. You make sure you curve it, okay? Unless you want your corset to be perforated, and if you want to have a hard time shoving that thing in there, you better curve out your boning. It's taking something out of me, okay? But I have to show you guys something, because hopefully you can see that, right? You see how like it's sandwiched? Let me pin this here. Hold on. You see how like, see that threads? You see how there is like, this thing is sandwiched here. All right, so I was trying to shove the boning in between this first layer right here. And because this leather is here, and this leather is here also at the bottom, there's too much friction there. It wasn't able to go in. What you need to do is shove it in between this bottom layer. You see how this bottom layer is like the inside? It's like this. It's not like this. This bottom layer, hopefully you can see it. This bottom layer is the slippery fabric that's on the wrong side of the fabric. Your boning will just slide in when you put it on this bottom layer. But if you put it on this top layer right here, you're gonna have a hard time pushing that down. This just came in and out, in and out, and like it just went straight in when I put it on this bottom layer. But I was trying to thrust it into this top layer. I was having a very hard time. You guys look how red my fingers are from working on the boner. My nails are dirty. Anyway, it's super crazy. All right, so this is the. Ooh, got this girl still sticking out. Hold on, y'all. Technical difficulties. Tried to fix the boning on this one. I'm going to have to do something. I don't know if I'm gonna have to. I don't know, but this thing is like not going in there at all. Like this is way too close to it. So I have no idea what I'm going to do. But yeah, that's as far as it's going. So I'm waiting for that. Okay, so we're low-key at a different angle today. I'm going to be finishing up the corset part of this pumpkin dress. We're doing the lining today, and then attaching the lining. Hopefully that works out. So you guys are just gonna watch me put together the lining and then sew the lining to the self fabric. But anyway, I'm going to be listening to my Bible project as I'm sewing. So this will just be like a speed through, maybe a voiceover. We're going to see. But anyway, thank you. And now we have the opportunity to use pins. I mean, you could definitely use clips if you want to, but I wanted my stuff to make sure it didn't move. It needed to be in pin prison. It needs to be in the pin. You know what I'm saying? If you got that joke, leave a like or comment or something. But yeah. Everything including the center back facing was sewn at 1/2 inch. And then after everything was sewn together, I made sure that I laid down flat the seam allowance and I top stitched the facing so that it wouldn't budge over or move. I trimmed up the excess facing that I did not need from the seam allowance to prevent, what's the word today? Bulking. I also made sure that the lining seam allowance was folded over to the alternating side of the self fabric corset, and then I top stitched that down at like 1/8 of an inch and trimmed off the excess. Back to using clips now because we're attaching the lining fabric to the self fabric. I stitched down the top of the corset at 1/2 inch. I don't have any waist tape, but I do have some ribbon, and what I did is just kind of put this against my body and marked and kind of like lean to one side and try to see if I can mark my waist, and I tried to do that from here into the middle, and I just marked it here and then translated it to the other side. So I'm just going to make sure that the middle of this ribbon is smack dab in the middle of each of these lines as best as I can. It's my first time adding waist tape to anything, so I don't even know if the waist tape is really supposed to be all the way to the end, but right now I don't want to cut a whole different ribbon. I already have some of these that I cut for something else that I was doing like a while back, And so I just want to use these. So I'm just going to attach it here and then attach it to the seam allowance of each boning channel, even though there's no boning in any of the inlining at all. I don't want to add it to the, typically would add it to itself, but I want to add any more punctures to the leather, so I'm adding it to the lining itself. And you just sew along the seam allowance of the, you just sew along the stitching of the seam allowance. Yeah. So
now I have to put this disclaimer in here because this waist tape was giving me problems. Okay, it did what it had to do. It did snatch my waist in more, but for some reason, and it only was happening if I sat down for too long, the corset was bulging out. Like the boning was actually curving outwards, and it wasn't even having to deal with like my body fat or anything. It was just like if I sat down too long, it was just curving and then it left creases, and I did not like it. Yeah, and if you go on my TikTok, you'll see that I took these pictures on 2 different days, and like in between that time, it straightened back out and the crease was gone. But once I put it on the second time and I sat down long enough for the car ride, it creased right back up. So B, because maybe I made the waist tape too small, although I don't think I did. I just feel like the corset that I made, it wasn't as structured. Like this lining is too thin, it's not as stiff. If I would have used like duck cloth or canvas, I think it would have held its shape more. If I would have added more boning, I think it would have held its shape more if I just didn't sit down in it too. Like I kind of slouched also. I didn't really sit up, and it's something that you can't do in a corset. A corset is literally made for you to like have good posture, and if you're slouching in it, it's going to cause it to bend in places it's not supposed to. So yeah, that was just my disclaimer. You also don't need to add the waist tape. I didn't add any waist tape in my last project, and I didn't have this problem. So yeah. After clipping the hem of the corset in place, I went ahead and stitched at 1/4 inch.
No, because why? I'm so happy that I caught it like early, but bruh, for real, I just want to toss you across. My brother would tell me. My brother would have told me if I had any bobbin thread left. It would have said bobbin thread about to be empty, but you, Bookie. You know what?
Anyways, to make sure you're going very slow, this is how slow I was going when I was stitching it. There's no need for you to rush this part. It's a really tricky area. It's a whole bunch of creases and curves and turns and whatever. So just take your time. I didn't get any footage of this, but you're going to turn the corset inside out after you sew the hem of the corset together. It's just a tube, so you're just going to flip it inside out. Take your time with this also. Moving on to the pumpkin itself, which is just a bubble skirt. You're basically going to cut out 3 circle skirts, and I made sure I got my measurements from Mood Skirt Calculator. You're going to measure on yourself how long you would like your skirt to be, and then add 2 inches and cut out 2 full circle skirts with that measurement. Then you're cutting out your 3rd circle skirt with 2 inches shorter from your original length. So if you wanted your skirt to be 18 inches long, you would cut your first 2 circle skirts 20 inches long, and then your final 3rd circle skirt to be 16 inches long. After cutting all the skirts out, you're going to want to fold them in half and just snip up one side to allow for any zippers or any closures that you want. Since we're using a poly cotton, I use a poly cotton at least, and it has no stretch. So in order for me to get into the dress, it needs to have an opening for me to step into it. When you've done that, you're going to conjoin the 2 longer circle skirts together at one end. Put your sewing machine on the longest stitch length that it can go. You're going to sew a 1/4 inch stitch at the hem of the 2 circle skirts that we conjoined. Do not back stitch any of these stitches. Make sure you leave a long tail at the start and end of your stitching. Now that we have those stitches in place, we're going to gather the hem so that it matches the hem of the 3rd shorter circle skirt that we cut. And to make sure that everything is gathered evenly, we're going to mark the midpoint of our 3rd skirt. You're going to fold it in half and just mark across from where we cut. You're going to mark the waist and the hem. Finding that seam where we can join the 2 skirts together, we're going to pin it where we marked the midpoint on the hem of the 3rd skirt. You might have to finagle, shimmy, or move around your gather so that everything is distributed evenly on each side. Don't forget to pin your gathers in place as you're evening everything out. Now that everything is pinned in place, you can attach the gather skirt to the inside 3rd circle skirt at 1/2 inch.
Just as a little note to you, the hem was sewn right sides together, but the waist will be sewn wrong sides together. So this is the hem. Once I flip it, look at that clean hemline. That's how that's gonna look. You're gonna see the fray, you're gonna see the unfinished edge here, but the bottom, this is the outside, this is the inside. outside. You see how the inside of the skirt is finished? This top part is not going to be finished unless it's encased with my waistband. So I'm going to join these together wrong sides together. But first I have to gather the waist of the two full circle skirts to the top.
So exact same thing you did for the hem is the exact same thing you're going to do with the waist. You're going to make sure that you match up the seam of the double circle skirt with the marking that we made on the third skirt where the waist is at. You're going to make sure your gathers are evenly distributed along the waistline, pin everything in place, and stitch that down.
It on top, and you can see my vision of it looking like a pumpkin, and I really was going to stuff it with this tool that I have, but I don't even think I need to do that. Like, this is so cute. Oh my goodness. It doesn't even much look like a pumpkin, but it's still so freaking adorable. Oh my goodness. Look how cute! It's so stinking cute. It's so freaking cute. So I'm gonna see how it looks if I stuff it. I have this tool from a maternity gown that I made for one of my first sisters, like 2 years ago. And I was planning to like stuff it on the inside and see if it kind of it blow it up some more to give it more of that poofy pumpkin look, because right now it's really droopy. So I'm gonna see how that looks first, and then
So I was just stuffing this skirt with almost nearly all the tool that I had left, and I even went back and added more tool because the video that's in the end of this video, or the video that's at the beginning, and my shorts were taken on 2 completely different days, like almost a week or 2 weeks apart. And I did transport this skirt in the first video, so it did get decompressed, so I did add more tool and it made it look a lot bigger. I wanted it to just be voluptuous, huge, everything.
I want something big. I want something that says I'm here.
And that's exactly what I accomplished with overstuffing this pumpkin skirt.
I'm sorry guys, I do not want to put that zipper in. I don't want to. I really don't want to put an invisible zipper in. But look how cute. Like, it matches so well. You can't even see it. Like, it's so bunched up you can't even tell. I just don't wanna. I'm gonna put some snaps in. I'm gonna put the waistband on, and then put the snaps, or put the snaps on, put the waistband on. Put the waistband on, put the snaps on, and then I'm done.
I know this angle is terrible, and I also don't have any more footage of it, but I did stitch one end of the waistband to the skirt and then folded over and hand stitch the inside, so it was a clean finish. I did get this grommet or eyelet attachment closer clamper thingy from Hobby Lobby, but I've been having a very hard time keeping the clamps and the eyelets inside the garment for some reason with this. So after I did clamp them in, they end up falling out anyway. With the snaps end up falling out, so I just decided to get, well, I already had some, but I started to use the sew-in snaps instead, and those worked a lot better. So if you know how to use this, you're good to go. If you don't, I would suggest using the sew-in snaps. We are finally at the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the final product. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at crystal.sewman. Bye, you guys. See you in the next video, which is coming quite soon.